Scrum teams face many challenges, and spillover is one of them, right? Especially for a team that's new to Agile, or for a team that face constant change, or there's different challenges coming from all different directions. There's a lot of reason why a Scrum team might face constant spillover, having constant spillover in a particular sprint. I know for sometimes some people call it carryover, some people call it spillover. It just means that you plan to complete a task within a sprint, and at the end of the sprint you are unable to meet that goal, or you're unable to complete all what you planned for. Welcome back to Aisha Scrum. I'm very happy to have you all join my platform. For my current subscribers and my new subscribers, I welcome you all to my channel. A little under the weather today, by the way. In case you notice my voice change, yeah, I have a little cold. But let's get back to the video. By the end of this video, you'll hear like a list of things that I think that will always affect a Scrum team, that will lead them to having spillover. I know sometimes leadership will be like, oh, this team are not completing all their tasks because they're having spillover, But sometimes there's a lot of underlying issue that can get a team to having that spillover. By the time you complete this video today, you all will learn all of this. And if you've been finding my content valuable, like and subscribe to this channel. I truly appreciate all of that. So now let's get back to the video. Looking behind me, I have a list of things that I've already written that I think that lead Scrum team to having spillover. And the number one issue I have on my board here is big user story. Yes, I have that as my number one because it's true. Having a user story that's so big, whereby it cannot be completed within a sprint, can lead to spillover. And I know some of you will be like, okay, Aisha, how can I know that as a Scrum Master looking at the user story? I am not technical. I don't understand sometimes this detailed technicality about what this development team are working on. How can I tell to know that if a user story is actually big? Also, that it's actually very, very important for you as a Scrum Master to not only know and understand and have the skills to know by looking at the user story, you can actually call it out to see that if it's big. So the number one reason that I've always coached, even by looking back on my previous video, is the first place I've always looked at is the acceptance criteria, right? So if you look at the acceptance criteria by rights, first of all, before we even go into the acceptance criteria, if you have a user story that you and I cannot read and understand and comprehend, that's not technical, right? Basically a user story where anyone looking outside from your team can read and understand the acts. Basically that user story is too technical to begin with. A good user story should be a simple user story where anyone can read it and understand it, regardless if you're technical or not. So the key big important factor that always helped me to see if a user story is so big is by looking at the acceptance criteria itself. So when I look at the acceptance criteria and I see that there's a multiple acts or there's a multiple steps to determine that story is actually completed, and that's where number one I call it out. Oh, looking at the story, I see that they want you to ensure that the user is asking for this, they're asking for that, they're asking for that. So if you really don't want to know in detail about all of this, look at my splitting user story video. I'm going to link it in the description down on this particular video, so you can see what I mean by when a user story is so big. I have a whole video on how to split a user story. Even when I link that below, you can be able to see that. But the first clue that I've always told me that user story is big is when I see the acceptance criteria is so big and they're asking for multiple action in that particular acceptance criteria. And also another clue that gives me like when a user story is so big is when the development team estimates it so big, right? When the estimate of the user story is like maybe 8, 13, 21. This is the Fibonacci sequence number I'm giving actually. So if they're giving it a large number of estimates, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 members of the team are estimating that particular story as that large, that's another clue for me to know as a Scrum Master that, oh, this story is actually very big. We should further break it down by talking to the product owner, right? So that's the whole reason why this famous the BORK invest criteria, right? That's to ensure that the user story is small enough to fit in a single sprint. And because if the story is so big, then there's a 100% chance that this particular story will not be completed within the sprint. Therefore, it will be a spillover, and which we do not want. So that's why it's very important for us to ensure that the story is not too big. So the next point I have in my board is ambiguous story. So what I mean by ambiguous story, that is a story basically that has no any detailed direction for on how you can actually work on it. So basically there is no who are we building this story for, what are we building, and why are we building it. So basically you read the story and there is no, you don't even know where to begin or where to start from. And development team will have such a difficulty for them to understand what's the ask coming from the stakeholder, right? Or the end user in this case. And if that's the case for that particular story, where the development team will meet during backlog refinement or during sprint planning, and they can come to an agreement to know what's the ask, that alone is a clue for you as a Scrum Master to know that maybe we should pull this story back and put it in a backlog, and we'll get back to this story, and then hopefully we can guide the PO and ask for more information, more clarity on that particular story. Because if the development team blindly accepts such story into the sprints, and they will blindly estimate the story, right? And then later on, midway through the sprint, they realize that, oh my God, this is not what we were expecting. This is beyond what we think, and was more than what we did. Or they start asking questions. Or we still need this information. We still don't understand this. Or we need more asks from the PO on this. They'll basically spend the whole sprint gathering more information for that particular story. Instead, they should have used that time to basically do the work, do the build of the particular story. So that's why it's extremely important for the user story to be really defined and clear, right? But we know that there's a point too sometimes in a story whereby we will use the whole sprint to actually do research and learn about it, which is a spike, right? But in this case, I'm talking about a functional user story that's being estimated and assigned to a team, and then you're expected to deliver that story, and at the end, you come out not even knowing where to start. See, that's why it's very important for us to have all this conversation early on during backlog refinement and all the way to sprint planning. The team will have that common understanding. All the questions will be answered as needed. That's not clear, right? Let's say we have an ambiguous story that it's not actually clear. So that particular story should not be made as a functional story. Instead, we should make that story as a spike, right? And we use that particular sprint to research have some kind of success criteria for that particular spike. And then the team will now determine on how they work on it in the following sprint. Unlike if you are expecting that at the end, the stakeholder will be expecting something from that particular story, and at the end, they'll be unable to complete it because the story is too ambiguous, and we do not want that as a Scrum Master, right? So what I have in my board is lack of cross-functional team. And by the way, before I go into detail about lack of cross-functional team, is if you've been finding my content valuable, please like and subscribe to this channel. I truly appreciate it all. I actually have a goal to reach to 10,000 subscribers by next year of August 2024. Please contribute to this achievement that I have for myself, and I really will appreciate it. And if you're interested in mentorship, do not hesitate to email me at admin@aishascrumtech.com. You can also go to our website. We now have our website now live at aishatech.com. You can see all of our programs that we have available. Now let's get back to the video about lack of cross-functional team. So the reason why I have that in there too is that because sometimes we all try to promote for a Scrum team. It's for a team that basically you have everything you need for that particular team for you to be able to deliver value, right? So you don't want to have a development team, only a PO, and then at the end you don't have a tester. Because I know sometimes at work you'll see they have like one tester, they'll be split between multiple teams, right? Or sometimes that one tester, by the time they get to your team, then it's almost end of the sprint, and then you now have a spillover, not because developers did not complete their work. It's due to the fact that this one tester is split between multiple teams, and we do not want that. So that's why for an Agile team to be successful, we have to hopefully ensure that we have all what this team need to deliver this value, where we don't need any outside help from other teams. But of course, sometimes we do have dependencies, right? We have all these other issues that we will address prior to pulling these stories into our sprint backlog, right? Because if we come to in the middle of the sprint and we realize that, oh my god, we still need we need assistance with the database team, or we need assistance with our DevOps or engineering team, or we need assistance with our QA team. So by the time we get hold of all of those people, then it's almost end of the sprint, and now we have another spillover. And that's something we really want to prevent. So before a team will commit to any story, it's extremely important that we discuss not only how we want to deliver the story, but also what are any other factors that will prevent us from meeting our goal with this particular story. And also, what else do we need? What will prevent us from meeting our goal? And if so, how are we also going to be demoing this story? We also include all of that as we are planning for this particular story. And at the end, how can we present it to the end user itself? And that's why it's very important for your Agile team to be cross-functional, where they have all what is needed amongst themselves to basically deliver this value. So the next point I have in my board is constant scope change, right? I meant constant scope change. Yeah, sometimes we cannot prevent scope change, right? Scope change will happen. That's what sometimes in Agile we cannot say no to change. We do sometimes welcome change even late in development, right? Going back to our Agile manifesto, right? At all times we should work in constant space, and also we should welcome change even late in development. But sometimes if we constantly having all of this change, like constant change in the middle of the sprint, that will lead to a Scrum team in constant spillover. Because remember, sometimes when this scope change is happening in the middle of the sprint, the team are just like basically bombarded with this story, like, oh, it's happened, we have to work on this. There's little information known for the most part, right? Or this is what we know so far about this. The developer is not only asking questions, trying to figure out what else is needed, what all the clarifying questions needed for them to ensure that this story will be ready, but also we are refining that story. We are having that conversation during the middle of the sprint. We are also basically right away start to build that story. So sometimes there's a lot of unknown that will be left out without the team knowing, and at the end they have to like also emergently also estimate that story. And at the end, there's a high chance that that particular story might become a spillover because there'll be some questions that were not answered, right? Unlike the other stories that we also had time during backlog refinement to discuss their story, and even sprint planning to even have more questions answered. Unlike this new scope change that came in that we have to address, that we didn't even have more time to even gather information, but we have to do all of it during the active sprint. That's why sometimes this constant scope change can affect Scrum team and also get the team to have spillover. But if the scope change is not often, like it's here and there, then we all know that it's good for a team to also even have a buffer, right? If you know that will always happen to your team, where they will always bring all this change happening in the middle of the sprint, and your team have to have no choice but to work on this item. It's a good practice for your team to also lose some bandwidth. So in case of those changes happen, then your team can be able to work on it so it won't affect your team, the team velocity, and also the way how your team will work. But it's very important for you as a Scrum Master to call these things out. As you look back at previous sprints, you're looking at not only ensuring that team is working together and understanding all what's being asked of them, but you're also ensuring that you are marking all the scope changes that happened like 3 sprints ago. How many scope change did we have? 2 sprints ago, how many scope change did we have? And the last 4th sprint, how many scope change did we have? Notice a pattern that's constantly happening, and that's when it's important for you to now start plan for buffer, right? You start planning for that because you know that if all these past 5 sprints we've been having this much scope change in the middle of our sprint, and there's a high chance in our next sprint we'll 100% have that much scope change too. So that's how you can help reduce the spillover within your team. So the next thing I have in my board is constant change in team members, right? So what I mean by this is like, for example, like when you have a particular Scrum team, we all know that for a Scrum team to be very successful, we have to have a dedicated team. So what I mean by dedicated team is that a team that basically are committed to the product goal, right? The product vision, and also they are very like the particular product that your team are working on is their number one priority. And that dedicated team, hopefully they are only within that one team. But we all know that sometimes that's impossible at work, right? Whereby you see one developer or two developer, they might be split between teams, like multiple teams. So basically they are split 20% in this team, 30% in the other team, and then that particular developer basically they are split all over. So if you have a team member, most of your team member are made up that way, right? So how can they commit to your own goal? How can they all see that they have the same vision when they are split between multiple visions, right? So then at the end, they will have to pick and choose in a particular sprint what team should they prioritize over the other. So how are we sure they're even going to prioritize our own team or our own product? That's why it's very important for a Scrum team to be a dedicated team whereby the teams are not being split all over the place, but instead we have one team and all of us are working towards the same common goal. And sometimes too, the turnover can affect the productivity of a team, can also thus lead to a spillover where we're constantly having change, where we have developers leaving, new developers coming, or we have a lot of junior developers in the team and senior developers are always taken out of the team. So all that continuous knowledge transfer, trainings, all that we have to do back and forth and can also put a toll on the team and also reduce productivity in the team because we always have to bring people up to speed like constantly. And that's something we do not want in Agile, but if that's something that constantly happens, and that's where you as a Scrum Master you have to speak up for your team and basically connect with leadership and tell them how this has been affecting your productivity of your team. That can also lead to a spillover for sure. So the next thing I have in my board is lack of understanding of Agile estimation. So by the way, if you've not yet like and subscribe to my channel, now is the time for you to like and subscribe to this channel. I appreciate you all for doing that. So now let's get back to the video. Lack of understanding of Agile estimation is another very, very crucial, important thing. So I've seen a lot of time for like a Scrum team, you hardly ever see a Scrum team overestimate. Most of the time you'll see a team that underestimate, right? And when they do underestimate, it's not that they just want to give it a lower estimate. It's just based on their understanding of estimate. That's why it's very, very important as a Scrum Master when you first join a team, you're not only getting to know them, we are also looking at their pattern of estimation. Like to see, oh, how have they been estimating? Or when they do estimate a story, how close are we with their predictability when it comes to that, right? With the estimation, and how have we been so close to close to accurate with our estimates? And if you notice that during midway through the sprint, almost all of the stories that were estimated like 2 or 3 are still in progress, right? And it's like 2 days remaining in the sprint, and that's a very good example to know that this particular team have been underestimating. That's why you should be asking questions like, oh, we have 3 days remaining in the sprint, and I see like there's a lot of stories that estimated 2 and 3 story points, and they've been in the progress column for the past 7 days. Are you all confident this story can be completed? And are you all confident that you've been estimating right? So tell me more about this. You ask the development team, right? You can't just assume that, oh, they are underestimating or they are overestimating or they are not working on it. So there can be multiple reasons why that can happen, right? They either be that they just move all their stories to in progress even when they are not working on all of them, right? Or the development team are basically giving this story 1 or 2 or 3 estimates, and at the end of the day it's actually taking them more effort and it's taking them even longer to complete it. That means they underestimate, that means they don't understand the estimation. Or there's no alignment within on relative estimation. Like for example, they do relative estimation, they don't understand what it means to give a story a 3 or what it means to give a story a 5 or what it means to give a story a 8. And that's when you as a Scrum Master, you have to find a way to coach them on this. And let's say this team will basically just move all their stories to in progress as the sprint starts. That's not a good practice, right? And that's when you have to tell the team that only move the story from to do to in progress that you are sure you are actually working on. If you know you are not working on any story, leave it in to do column. Only move the story that you are actually physically working on to in progress, so that we know that, oh, this is the particular story you are working on. So it will look like, oh, you give a story a 2 and that story have been in the column for so long, when the other story are being passed on to the next columns, And if it's a case about the team not understanding about estimation, guess what? You have to do a workshop on estimation and coach your team on technique on estimation, so that they could bring some kind of alignment with estimation. So I hope that helped. So the last thing I have is burnout, right? So burnout is when the team are basically being overworked, right? When they are being like given constant workload that the team cannot actually able to work on. And you basically, that's why it's very important for you as a scrum master, doing a retrospective. You should also do like a health check, right? So just ask the team, how are they all feeling? How confident are they with the particular workload? Are they working over the weekend? Because you can tell too, right? As a scrum master, you can see when the stories are being closed on weekends or late at night. You can see that. Those are the people you should check on them. Like, oh, I noticed that you were closing story at this time over the past weekend. Is everything okay with you? I hope you are not being burned out. Because sometimes they can estimate the story and they'll be like, oh my God, I actually took on way more than I can handle. The story was even more beyond what I estimated it for. It took more effort. So that's when you can be able to have this conversation together as a team, so you can retrospect. Because it's extremely important for the team to come together and have this common uh, balance about work-life balance, right? Where they can able to come in at work and do their part, and at the end, they can also deliver this work and reduce all of this spillover. If you've been finding my content valuable, like and subscribe to my channel. I truly appreciate you all. And if you're interested in mentorship, do not hesitate to email me at admin@aishascrumtech.com. Thank you all for watching this video, and see you all again in my next video.